And I just wanna be with you tonight. God, please, I'm afraid that it's true, but I changed the game for you. I wanna see what you do.
Lloyd Polite Jr., or simply Lloyd, born January 3rd, 1986. Today's feature is an artist that had a few important ingredients to future success: talent, timing, and opportunity to be whatever he wanted to be in R&B music. When the trio of Ja Rule, Ashanti, and Irv Gotti linked up around the late 90s, early 2000s era and had their outstanding run in urban music, leading to hit after hit, only one thing could stop them, as Ja Rule was displaying he had the Midas touch when it came to connecting musically with the time and being 100% in sync with things like radio and on-screen visuals, making him one of the biggest artists of his generation, until a guy by the name 50 Cent came along, and let's be nice and just say he ended all that. Except for Lloyd, he was at the perfect time when fans needed something different from the Targets and 50 Cent's scope, but they couldn't deny Murder Inc.'s sound, and Lloyd was perfectly one step removed, it seemed, from the beef that he could have carried the torch for the label past the icebergs and into the sunset and smooth sailing. He had the unique voice, personality, and even the hair, which was so valuable when he finally cut it for the first time as a celebrity, it was actually donated to help a charitable organization. But saving the ink is not what ended up becoming of Lloyd's in and out and some would call disappointing career. Unlike the aforementioned Murder Inc. artist, a great selling album always seemed to elude Lloyd. He'd have the hits too, like You featuring Lil Wayne, Southside featuring Ashanti, and who can forget the club smash that lit up the dance floors, Get It Shorty, over the course of 3 albums. Not to mention Dedication to My Ex featuring the elusive Andre 3000, but that never amounted to the same success in sales, having just one album at his peak go at least gold. It never made much sense because 3 of his first 4 albums were top 10 in the US. In 2007, Lloyd was one of the biggest R&B artists just looking at the charts, but by 2011, he'd released his last album for the next 7 years, King of Hearts, featuring some of the biggest names in music at the time, like Chris Brown, Lil Wayne, Andre 3000, Carrie Hilson, Trey Songz, and even R. Kelly. An album made for Lloyd to have success in album sales, well produced by Polo the Don, and couldn't be more industry. But it landed on open airs and shallow pockets, failing to sell adequate records versus the stature of Lloyd and his guests, solidifying he was long past his potential window to become the superstar in music he had the talent to be. His album True was released 2018, where it was clear the Lloyd train to topping his R&B peers was never going to happen. And then he kinda just disappeared altogether. With a unique voice, look, and personality, Lloyd was supposed to have been a star. Instead, disappointment after disappointment led to a fading career and questions about what happened to Lloyd's potential. Let's talk about it. Salute to Swift Millie for this request. It's your boy JC, Stunted Growth Music. Let's get it, man. Take a minute to like, subscribe, and comment on who I should do next. Lloyd is a singer from New Orleans, Louisiana, but raised in Atlanta, where he developed his love for music and joined the teen pop group In Tune in '96 at just 10 years old. At the time, the kiddie pop / kiddie rap era was booming. But the group quickly disbanded after lack of success, and Lloyd ventured off into his solo career, being recognized by LA Reid and Def Jam. After eventually moving to New York City, Reid introduced his music to Def Jam titan Irv Gotti, who, like mentioned, as a label were on fire at the time and looking for a male singer to contrast Ashanti. Lloyd was perfect because talent-wise he matched the bill, but even more personality-wise, he, Ja, and Irv always seemed cut from the same cloth in that way, making a seamless match for each other. He released his Murder Inc. debut Southside featuring Ashanti, and immediately he took off in the urban market. It peaked at 24 on the US charts, leading up to his debut Southside album released in 2004. Stunt number 1, not selling like expected. In any form of vocation, especially the entertainment industry, expectation is something you can't run away from. It's why I think you see many of the so-called hottest artists today rely on all singles instead of worrying about full-length studio albums. They and their teams are afraid of the responsibility of not meeting those sales expectations, which has been the bar in which you can really tell if the artist is as hot as social media and radio makes them seem. I guess they learned something from the previous generation. It's why Cardi B has only one album that came in 2018 and nothing since, with a plethora of singles that have went multiple times platinum. Take an artist like Ice Spice, the hottest female rapper in the game at the moment, regardless of how we may feel about her actual talent, more than flaunting her sex appeal every chance she gets, but she'll probably never release a full-length album while she's at her peak. It's too risky and too much responsibility. Almost like being called to the front of the class to give the speech everyone's been hearing about for weeks. Once it comes out and it's not successful, can mean fans opening their eyes to seeing all the attention was just a fluke. More than that, your label begins to realize all the money invested in you is about to be less in return and push you less and less going forward. Coming up in the ringtone 2000s era when LLOYD was most popular, his fans seemed to only like buying his singles they could turn into ringtones and forgot to actually support the artist so he could continue making top-of-the-line hits like the ringtone perfect Get It Shorty that could stand alone from an album. Because he wasn't moving units like the rest of the top Murder Inc. artists, or top R&B artists for that matter, opportunity dwindled for him and led to a quick disinterest and eventual hiatus. Stunt number 2, leaving Murder Inc. I guess after all the disappointment album-wise with Murder Inc., although he was still an earner for them in singles, LLOYD decided it was best for him to leave and take a deal with Interscope Records, the home of Murder Inc.'s most hated, 50 Cent. 50 has been a thorn in the Murder Inc. side since the Ja Rule beef earlier in the decade, with most feeling like it was 50 that led to the demise of the Inc. in large part. Certainly solo artist Ja Rule. Rule hadn't been the same since losing that war of popularity, and by the end of the decade, two of the label's top artists in Ashanti and LLOYD won it out. Irv Gotti says he let LLOYD out his deal to sign with Interscope for no money down, but regretted it when he seen LLOYD do a video featuring who else? 50 Cent. When Irv saw the video, he says it felt like a slap in the face and immediately lost all love for LLOYD. Says if he saw him hit by a truck, he'd just keep it moving, like oh well, and carry on with his lunch. The song in question, Let's Get It In, really did nothing to help LLOYD's career and presented the biggest problem with him. Interscope not knowing how to promote him, evident in the songs they chose as his singles. That song featuring 50 plus the Dedication to My Ex song were horrible choices and the beats to them were obvious duds, yet those were the rollouts they chose and they went nowhere. Say what you want about Murder Inc., they knew how to sell singles and LLOYD benefited from that early. Not sure why that didn't amount to album sales, and LLOYD, along with his labels, can be held responsible for this, but with the Inc., his singles did a lot. On Interscope, he failed to even do that, and it led to further non-success. Stunt number 3, the extended hiatus. After his 2011 flop, LLOYD decided to take a break and move on into finding himself, as he calls it, moving to LA and going through his self-transformation, cutting his hair and starting over, enjoying vegan foods, learning new instruments, and attempting to live a more healthy life. That's all fine and dandy, but when it comes to helping you in music, that change rarely does. Unless you're Andre 3000, who could come back from 10 years off and still he'd sell millions of records today. Kendrick Lamar, Drake, same, but not for a guy like LLOYD. During his redesign process, as he called it, his fans moved on from his sound, having him come back to all new ears who weren't feeling what he was selling to them, not like the young guys and girls that were coming up with him in the 2000s. To be in the game from 96 and still releasing albums in 2018 is crazy in itself. So one should expect a decline at some point. It just seemed a hiatus was the last thing Lloyd needed, but was kind of forced into, seeing as his music just wasn't selling. It's been 5 years since his last album, even though no one's really expecting him to release a project anytime soon, as it's long been clear his potential has been faded. All in all, Lloyd was still a good artist that may have not been managed correctly for as good of a talent he was and the pedigree he had in music, releasing his first album at 13 years old. Enjoyable artist, but for these reasons, his growth was stunted. Salute, much respect. It's your boy JC, Stunted Growth Music, and I'm out.